Welcome to Raiders in Focus, the Randolph School podcast. I'm Elizabeth Crampsey, Director of Marketing and Communications.
And I'm Glynn Below, Director of Admission and Enrollment Management. We're so glad you're joining us for our very first episode.
Before we dive in, we want to share what this podcast is all about and why we're doing it.
Each month, Raiders in Focus will take listeners inside Randolph School.
We will spotlight a different aspect of education, student life, and well-being at Randolph, sharing stories, insights, and perspective that bring our community to life.
Whether you're part of the Randolph family or exploring what makes our school unique, Raiders in Focus offers a thoughtful look at the people, programs, and experiences that define the Randolph journey.
Since this is our first time behind the mic together, we thought we'd start by sharing a little bit about ourselves.
Awesome. So you can get to know us before we start diving into all things Randolph. Elizabeth, why don't you kick it off?
I'd love to. I grew up in Northeast Ohio and was lucky to attend a public school that ranked among the top 2 to 3% nationally, so private school was never really on my parents' radar. After that, I attended Ohio State University, and upon graduation from college in 2010, I moved to Washington, D.C. to begin my career and landed my first job at Blackboard. That experience set me on a path in EdTech, and over the years, I worked at a variety of technology companies, mostly in education, while living in San Francisco and Los Angeles. Most recently, before joining Randolph, I worked remotely here in Huntsville at a virtual learning software company founded in 2020. After a few years of working from home and marketing products designed for online learning, I realized how much I missed being in person. And if I felt that way, I could only imagine how students and teachers felt. With a 5-year-old at home, I saw firsthand how important it was for students to be in the classroom. That inspired me to start looking for opportunities in schools. Fortunately, the stars aligned when the position opened up at Randolph. I took a chance and applied, and here I am in my 3rd year. It has been fascinating to gain a deeper understanding of the unique value that a private school education, particularly Randolph, can provide. I feel grateful to be a part of this community, and it's truly a joy to wake up and come to work every day. And Glenn, it's a joy to work with you every day.
Oh, that's awesome. I love hearing people's origin story. Like you, I had a variety of schooling growing up, parochial, private, and independent, and public. I was a Navy brat. So when I found myself in Huntsville many moons ago, I started in the Huntsville City School System as a French teacher. But I started to ride to professional organizations with our department chair here at Randolph, Peggy Bilbroom. And what I found was that I was funding my own professional development, and Peggy was painting a picture of really invested administration here at Randolph. And so she started talking to me about Randolph, and then I came here as a French teacher. And I'm in my 16th year as admission director now.
Amazing. You've brought so much to this school, and one of the things that we share is a deep belief in what Randolph offers students and families. So Glenn, the big question for you, why Randolph?
One of the things that we talk about a lot are relationships and community. And a quick story to illustrate that is a thing that Nurse Deb and I did this past February. Deb Smith was the longtime nurse here at Randolph, 25 years. And some of you may know the StoryCorps program, where you are invited in to record a conversation about something meaningful. And of course, the conversation gets archived, the National Archives. It's a wonderful, worthy attempt to chronicle American history. But she and I decided to do a conversation devoted to Randolph, a love letter to Randolph. And that is filled with our why. And it really does come down to the people for me, the relationships, knowing all of the phenomenal programs, getting to know the faculties as they start their journey here at Randolph. The alumni who are coming back to Randolph and bringing their kids to the pre-K program are just so much fun to work with and so fulfilling in my present job.
Excellent. And you have an alum who is near and dear to your heart. Can you tell us a little bit about her?
Oh, yeah, of course. I'll always talk about Allie. She was a lifer here, K through 12, and graduated in 16. Had an amazing experience that prepared her for everything she wanted to do moving forward. And like so many people in their 20s, I learned a lot from that generation about work-life balance. And I think she learned so much about that here at Randolph, how to really be her best self moving forward in the world.
Excellent. For me, the magic of Randolph is how it blends high expectations with high support. Students are challenged, but they also feel known, cared for, and encouraged every step of the way. And that balance is what makes our community so special.
Exactly. It's where challenge meets support, the Randolph difference.
And speaking of the Randolph difference, we are thrilled to welcome our very first guest, Randolph's head of school, Adam Dubé.
I'm thrilled to be here.
Adam, thank you for being here on episode 1. Can you share a little bit about your backstory and origin to Randolph?
So, like Elizabeth, I'm actually also an Ohioan. I grew up in northeastern Ohio. I had a little bit of a circuitous route getting into education. After high school, I actually went into the Marine Corps for 4 years before going away to college and learned a lot about leadership. And believe it or not, what I learned probably as much as anything is how much I valued education and formal education. Went to college, did undergraduate and graduate work in classical languages. So I studied Greek and Latin, and I did what all good classicists do. With that degree, I went and became a teacher because there's really not a whole lot else that you can do
Of course.
when you become a classicist. But I feel really good about what I did with it and where I ended up in my career. And so became a teacher, and then got into administration. And first headship was at a small pre-K through 12th grade school up in Missouri, and did that for about 7 years before I heard about Randolph and wasn't really at a place where I was looking for a new school, but was really intrigued when I started looking into Randolph for a number of different reasons. One, what amazed me about Randolph is, I didn't really think much about Huntsville, Alabama, or this school before I started looking at it. And I started talking with people both from the region, but also across the country that I know as colleagues, and asked them, have you heard of this school? And I couldn't believe how many people had heard of Randolph. And in fact, it got to the point where I felt badly that I hadn't heard of Randolph.
Mhm.
And so I thought, well, this is worth checking out. And so my wife and I came down and visited the school in the fall of 2019. It was just an amazing experience. And we fell in love with the school, fell in love with the community. We realized that Randolph is a great school. You said high standards, high support, and the opportunities that students have at Randolph are incredible. And so we felt compelled to join the Randolph community, and we're fortunate enough to be offered the opportunity to become the head of school here at Randolph. And so I joined in the fall of 2020. Weird time to join a school during the pandemic. But I think that again illustrated how incredibly supportive and wonderful our community is, even in that difficult time, how everybody rallied together to support each other, and made me feel good about it. We also, my wife and I, are parents of two Randolph alum. So our middle child, he graduated from Randolph about 3 years ago, and our youngest child just graduated last spring. And we dropped him off at college just a couple months ago. Just has been an incredible opportunity and experience to be at Randolph.
Excellent. You've been here for about 5 years now, and it's clear that you've put so much thought into our instructional identity and what sets us apart. We've been talking about the Randolph difference and what really shapes a healthy student experience. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, so we've spent a lot of time talking about this. So we did this again speaks to, I think, the forward-thinking nature of our school. We created a new strategic plan during the pandemic. Most schools were just trying to survive through the pandemic, but our board was forward-thinking enough and saying, well, we're going to be on the other side of this at some point in time. We need to know what we're going to do after that. And so we put together a great strategic plan built on several principles, but one of those principles is what we say is prepare for more. We settled upon four different areas, and those four areas are growth, well-being, engagement, and achievement. And so we've spent the last several years looking at those four concepts and trying to define what they mean in an educational setting. So we had this great exercise a couple of years ago. We were talking about them, and assistant head of school for academics, Jerry Beckman, had given us a challenge, and he gave us this hodgepodge of items. And we had this design challenge, and we had to come up with a physical representation of those four elements. And I I hate to say my group did not come up with the winning concept, but the winning concept is incredible. And it was the idea of a four-sided teeter-totter. And I love this example because when you think about a four-sided teeter-totter, when that is in equilibrium, all four seats are equal. They're all at the same point. Everything has an equal level of importance. And if you think about growth, well-being, engagement, and achievement, each representing a seat on that teeter-totter. But it also means that there are times in a student's educational journey where one of those things may be prioritized over another. Great independent schools like Randolph, we're a college preparatory school. Achievement's a big part of what we do, and we have a lot of very, very high achieving students. We have a lot of high achieving parents, high achieving faculty at our school. We want to be able to support what high achievement looks like, to define it, to ask ourselves the question, why is this a worthy pursuing this goal? But we also want to want to make sure that we're careful to say that you might be pursuing high achievement at this point in time. And so it's going to create some stress, a little anxiety in your life. That might mean that well being becomes a little bit less important and goes down as achievement goes up. But the goal is that eventually those things would all come back into equilibrium. I'm really proud of the thinking that's gone into this. And in fact, I was at it was a national conference just a couple weeks ago. And I was talking with a board chair and a head of school from a really well known school in the Minneapolis area. And we were talking about this concept. Their board chair pulls out his pen and paper and he starts taking notes on it. And he's asking me questions about it. And the next morning I saw him again. And he's like, I really am fascinated what you guys are doing at Randolph, because they're wrestling with these same concepts. And I was really proud of the work that our leadership team has done in trying to articulate these concepts and how they can meaningfully impact the student experience. We talk a lot about this Randolph difference. My goal as a school is that everything we do should be adding value to the student experience, to the parent experience, to the faculty staff experience. So this has been it's been a big part of the work that we're doing, and we're it's ongoing work for us.
So much to be proud of. And the administrative team actually did some work on developing their own work habits and balance.
Yes.
Because on my pre-K tours, we actually talk about the skills that we're helping those 4 and 5-year-olds to acquire. And it always resonates with my tours that these are high-level skills about balancing your mood. We talk about those little bodies with the big emotions
Yes.
and how we help them to understand that. Of course, I'm thinking about our awesome upper school students who are working so hard and managing that balance. And it's so important to start and do that for everybody in our community.
I think it's a really good point that this is part of the work for us figuring out what do those 4 concepts mean developmentally, right? What does achievement look like in a pre-kindergarten classroom? It doesn't mean ACT prep, right? But some people
Ultimately, it
right?
does.
I mean, listen, there are schools I know of that it does mean ACT prep, but that's not Randolph. But what does it mean in a pre-K classroom? What does it mean in a 3rd grade classroom, a 7th grade classroom? What does it look like for a senior? And there's a lot of work that has to go into doing that. But I think we're well suited for the task. And we have a group of deep thinkers and leaders in our faculty and staff who are excited to dig into that work.
Every August, early September, we send a survey out to our new families, and they respond to a series of questions from everything about, how did the tour go to how was your orientation on campus? And we always appreciate that feedback. But one of our new families noticed that their kids have been happily surprised by the availability of counselors and learning specialists.
Mm.
The parents really value that, and I think that speaks to that support in each division.
Yeah.
And we talk about support a lot. That word is really important to get right.
We do. So we've actually been talking a lot. Researcher named David Yeager. So we've talked about the book. It's about the science of motivating young people in the ages of 10 to 25. And one of the things he talks about is what he calls a mentor mindset. And the concept of a mentor mindset is that you have an environment where you have high standards and high support. And for my entire career, I've often talked about I've talked about how important it is to have high standards. That believing in kids and students beyond the ways in which they even believe in themselves is meaningful. They can feel that, they experience that, and they'll rise to that challenge. And so having that high standards really, really important. But in a school where you also have a challenging college preparatory experience and a wide, diverse curriculum that really challenges kids to be deep, meaningful thinkers, they're going to come up against times where they need support. And what David Yeager's research says and what the mentor mindset says is that the environments, and by the way, this isn't just true for schools, this is true for pretty much any work environment. You can think of it where places you've worked where you've experienced this. When you have that high standard, high support environment, that's where you really thrive. You know that the people believe in me. They know that I can do this, and I may not know it, but they know it. And their belief in me and their challenge, but not just challenging me, but supporting me to reach my full potential, that's an environment where people will thrive. And that's what we're trying to create here at Randolph. That's honestly, it's what Randolph has done for decades. I've got story after story talking with alumni who have experienced that very thing. You remember just a couple of years ago, Constantine, you came by, right?
Yeah.
He graduated, what was it, 70s?
I think it was, late 70s, early 80s.
Yeah. you introduced him to me, and you remember what he said? He said that going to Randolph was like winning the lottery,
Oh, that's
you
right.
know? And
He felt so free to explore the creativity.
I think he went on and got 2 PhDs, maybe both at Harvard, I can't remember, but I think it had his own company. It's stories like that where you have this student who was challenged and supported to achieve his full potential, and he did. And that's part of the Randolph difference.
And that's the end goal, to help these students all reach their full potential.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Part of our Randolph difference is also GreenGate, which serves students with dyslexia and related learning differences. Can you talk about GreenGate's role in the Randolph difference?
It's interesting. So the Green Gate program was one of the things that drew me to Randolph. When I saw that Randolph had merged with Green Gate just a year or two before I was looking at this job, that was a signal to me that says that our school community is thinking about what teaching and learning looks like in a robust way. And they were thinking about what a child's potential looks like in a robust way, in ways that's not limiting, but that's very wide. And so the the Green Gate program allows us to identify students who are diagnosed with dyslexia and to hopefully, as much as possible, intervene as early on in their educational experience so that they can learn they don't you're never cured from having dyslexia,
Mhm.
but they can learn how to live and work and have a robust academic life despite their learning difference. And so I was drawn to Randolph when I saw this because I realized that we're looking at students and saying, even a learning difference is not equated with intelligence. We have a lot of really, really, really high IQ students who have learning difference. In fact, we know that the general population can be up to 20% or higher of individuals who have a learning difference and certainly dyslexia. And so having Green Gate become a part of Randolph has really helped what we do in the ways in which we think about not just dyslexia, but learning differences in general. And what does that support look like to help students reach their full potential? And so that changed us culturally and the way in which we look at learning differences and what a child might be able to achieve. It's changed us philosophically because I think that it's allowed us to think more broadly about what academic success looks like, but it's also changed us practically. The Green Gate program is based on the Orton Gillingham method, and that is what has become popularized as the science of reading. It's a program or a way of teaching reading that is highly successful. And it's important because there's a lot of research that reading is actually not something that we intuitively get. Some people do, a lot of people do, but teaching it in a thoughtful manner makes a big difference. If a great example of this, the state of Mississippi about 10 years ago, the state of Mississippi was ranked 49th. Their students ranked 49th in the country on reading scores. They moved to a science of reading based program across the state. And in 2024, their students ranked ninth in the country in reading. They call it the Mississippi Miracle. That it's made that big of a difference. And that's not just affecting the lowest kids, that's affecting every kid. But what we've done is from a teaching standpoint, we talk about like their toolbox it's gotten bigger, right? We've put more tools in their toolbox. And when you have motivated teachers like we do, who want to be better at the profession every day, they're seeking out these opportunities and these experiences to learn more. And that's what Green Gate's able to offer them. And so our teachers have become increasingly more expert. That was a little redundant there, but they become
No,
increasingly expert in what they're able to do with the students in their classroom.
I don't think parents can hear that enough, that the
Probably.
teachers are experts.
Yes.
Because I was looking at my notes about the parent survey that I referenced earlier, and it's just littered with teacher, genuine, specialized, devoted, communicative, constantly giving feedback. And I know our Green Gate families feel that way as well, so that they're always engaged. And stories abound our students who are enjoying school for the very first time in their
Yeah.
lives. Those are really powerful stories.
One of the things I tell people I love doing is I love doing car line in the morning and opening the doors for cars. And I'm usually up front where our lower school kids are running in. And they're running in. I'm opening the doors and kids are running into school. And they're excited to be at school every day. And it's Green Gate students, it's Randolph students. But they are excited to be at school every day. And what more could you want as a parent but to know that your kid is excited to be at school every day?
Absolutely. I would say the same thing goes for our teachers. You kind of alluded to this earlier, Glenn. You spoke about your professional development, how you were funding it yourself. And now that you're at Randolph, you have so many more resources. And I think that's true for us being one of 18 schools in the nation accredited by Orton Gillingham Academy and the only one in Alabama. Our teachers are fortunate to have access to such great resources.
So I, I mention this to our staff from time to time, but there are very, very few schools, maybe on one hand, that are able to do the things that we are able to do because we have this school within a school program, right? Because we have the Green Gate program within the Randolph program, and I mean that. That's not hyperbole. That there are very few schools that are able to provide the kind of tailored experience that Randolph is able to provide for students, especially those students with dyslexia. We introduced the Bridge program in seventh grade a couple of years ago. We were able to create a program that blends the best of both the Ringate program and the Randolph program and provide a what we would call a scaffolded level of support as kids move out of the Greengate program and into the Randolph program. And then to your point about support, Glenn, we've really invested heavily in that. We've invested heavily in support by adding learning specialists at all three divisions. And we've grown what we do for that program. But and by the way, that program is not just for students with learning differences. Actually, every kid have benefited from the learning support program. Both of my boys who were here used the learning support program for tutoring in math, in particular, when they were struggling with math. And I told you I'm in classics, so I wasn't the guy that was going to help them with math, right? But we found
Yeah.
somebody in-house. We had somebody that it was as simple as going to our learning support specialists. They both were able to do their tutoring during the school day. And the great thing about it too was it wasn't that they just did tutoring ongoing for the entire school year. They got it, we would call like just in time, right? They got what they needed when they needed it. And then that support fell back. And then when we needed that support again, the support came back. And so the learning support program is really built on the principle that the more every student is successful at Randolph, the better off everybody is.
And it also speaks to knowing the students.
Yes.
So teachers have this resource, and knowing always how a student's journey is evolving allows for that support, that challenge
Yes.
at every turn, and no slipping through the cracks.
It's that coordination, right? So tutors are working for Randolph essentially.
It's wonderful to have this resource in-house.
And so those teachers work in conjunction with our classroom teachers. So it really is a relatively seamless process. I'm really proud of the work that our team has done in pulling that program together. And they're amazing, thoughtful educators, those learning specialists whom we've hired to see the success that students are having. It's just wonderful.
And a shout out to our division heads who
And
keep
to our,
the program humming as well, that clearly articulated mission.
yes, yes, yeah, we have great leadership at the division levels.
I want to go back to the Randolph difference, and we spoke about growth, well being, engagement, and achievement. And I'm going to bring out the old teacher in you. If you had to give a grade to each of those four or rank them in some way, where would you candidly say that we're strongest, and where do you think we need the most work?
I can speak to Randolph, but what I will say is this, that the challenges are not endemic to Randolph. They're actually challenges that happen at the national level. And so on achievement, we do great. We've got 12 national merit semifinalists, 4 committed scholars. You look at the schools that our students go to, and you look at our AP scores that are well above national averages. And there's all these statistical measures that we have to look at and say, from an achievement, a measurable achievement standpoint, we are far and away the best in the state. And we're actually ranked number one in the state, number one K-12 school in the state. And I would think probably in the top 10 in our region throughout the Southeast. So I think we do really great with achievement. Growth is an area we've been talking about a lot because one of our core values, and we've done a lot of work to define our core values over the past, over the 4 or 5 years, growth mindset is one of our core values. And we talk about this a lot. And it's interesting, our kids know what a growth mindset means. Our values go through all divisions, so they know what a growth mindset means. And yet, some of them still suffer from a fixed mindset. So we try to do a lot of work of trying to cultivate that effort-based praise that teachers give students so that they can understand that just because you come against something that's challenging for you, it doesn't mean that you're not smart, that you're not capable. It just means that you've got a challenge.
And this
Yep.
is when I get the most head nods, by the way, on a tour,
Really?
because our students come to us from high achieving families. All of our families have this in common. They want a very challenging environment for their kids to thrive. And learning what failure looks like, learning
Yeah.
how to step back and analyze your work candidly and honestly, that's not an easy skill. And we start it in David House's art classroom
Yes. Yeah.
and grow that all the way up. And it's tough. That is a tough lesson to learn, but so important.
Yes.
Growth mindset.
So you mentioned David House. When students finish his work in this class, they raise their hand and they say, Mr. House, I've done my best work. Not I'm finished, but I've done my best work.
There we go.
And-
It's
But
outstanding.
But anyhow, that growth mindset. So growth is an area for us to continue to focus on. Well-being is a big one. Anybody who's read The Anxious Generation knows that anxiety and depression have been on the rise in young people for a decade and a half. There's lots of argument and debate as to why that's happening, but regardless of the why, we know that it is happening. So well-being is really important. So actually, we went through a pretty in-depth analysis of our schedule, and we rolled out new schedules at all 3 divisions this year that are designed to create more breaks in this schedule and to create opportunities for students to manage their course load in ways that improve well-being. You can still have the same level of achievement, but we're trying to be more mindful and thoughtful. And I have a group of students that I work with called the Head of School Council, and I was talking with them just a few weeks ago about this, and they were saying how much they really loved the new schedule this year. So
Speaks to that balance that we're
yeah,
looking at, that four-seated teeter-totter.
they're feeling
Balance.
yeah.
Yep.
So the well-being part is something that's important to us, and I would say it's a focus. We do a national survey. We actually have been improving in this what we call a well-being index for our students, which is great. We want to see that. And then the last piece is just engagement, and that is to just continuing to think about what does our curriculum look like? What does teaching and learning look like in Randolph in a way that makes it fun and engaging? Just as those lower school kids run into school every day, wouldn't it be great if upper school kids ran into school every day? Maybe not. I don't know that I see that happening. But
I think they have a pretty good clip,
yeah,
especially lately. There's a crisp fall feeling in the air.
Yes.
Rowdy the Raider was making the rounds yesterday, doing some dances on stage. Good energy.
if you walk across our upper school campus, you will see that, right? You'll see kids sitting at what we call a Harkness table, a round, big oval table, and every kid has a front row seat to that conversation in the class. And every kid is expected to participate in that class. You'll walk into our STEM lab and you'll see Dr. Taylor working with kids on projects that are self-directed projects. They're showing up to his class. A kid who wants to build a drone, and Dr. Taylor was like, we now have the ability to work with carbon fiber. And so this kid is trying to create a drone that's, by the way, based on a summer internship he had with a drone company here in Huntsville. I mean, just incredible things. So that engagement is so important, and you feel it and see it across the classrooms.
So I think it was a trick question when I asked you to rank them because going back to the four-sided teeter-totter, they are all equally as important.
They're equally important. I don't know that we always do all of them equally, but goal is to keep those in balance.
Goal-minded. A lot's changed, but I think that has remained the same, that we are extraordinarily thoughtful and keep the student at the center of every decision we make.
I was recently at the 50th reunion for the class of 1975 and had a lot of really good, interesting conversations with some of those folks. And one person in particular told me, Randolph taught me how to think, not what to think. And that is something that we still hear today.
Yeah.
So I'm really proud of the legacy that we have built upon and how we're continuing to focus on growth, well-being, engagement, and achievement here at Randolph.
Yeah, I think that's great. And that was a fun gathering.
It really
So,
was.
yeah.
It really was. Well, Adam, thank you so much for being our very first guest. We couldn't think of a better way to launch this podcast. It's been great getting to sit down and talk with you, and I'm sure that our listeners will enjoy hearing from you as well.
Yes, thank you so much. And thanks to all of you listening. Whether you're part of the Randolph community or you're just getting to know us, we're so glad that you tuned in to hear a little bit more.
And it's been my pleasure. I'm just so excited about our school and the future of our school. So go Raiders.
Go Raiders.
Go Raiders.
Tune in next month as we continue Raiders in Focus.